That's one thing about being the tag team champions. Everybody wants you. And you know how bad we love a fight. So bring it on, anybody. It don't matter if you're the Rago Sisters, the Powers of Pain, whoever. Just come on, because we love breaking bones.
Well, there's a lot of good tag teams out there. You gotta put on the line. You gotta mention the Twin Towers. You gotta mention Bobby Heenan and the Brainbusters. You know something we learned a long, long time ago when we used to be with Feuds and Stooge? It's harder to hold on to these than it is to get them. I'll tell you what, ever since we captured the belts, we've had a hard time. But I'll tell you, we're fighting champions. We're not hard to find, boys. We put our name on a dotted line. You want us, you come after us.
And welcome to the 6th edition of the Secluded Paradyme. Can you believe it? 5 editions have already been uploaded, and this is the 6th show of the Paradyme. I'm Specsun, aka Brightwave, from YouTube.com. Broadcast yourself, folks, as well as from InYourHeadOnline.com. The place to be to get all your wrestling news, the information, as well as the message boards. The infamous In Your Head message boards. I strongly recommend that you check that out if you're not already a part of the In Your Head experience. But nevertheless, let's get down to business. This episode of the Paradyme will chronicle one of my favorite tag teams in the history of the industry. I'm talking about Axe and Smash of Demolition, if you didn't get the hint already from the intro into the 6th edition of the Paradyme. What the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, were to Georgia Championship Wrestling around 1983, as well as from the AWA during 84 and 85. And, of course, Jim Crockett Promotions during the late 1980s/NWA, Demolition were just as dominant, and they represented that same niche to the audience that the Road Warriors represented in those other organizations in the World Wrestling Federation from 1988 through 1991. Specifically for 3 years, 88, 89, and 90 were their most dominant years in the company. I don't think many people can dispute that. One of the reasons why they were so appealing to me, even today, is just looking at their title run reigns during that period. They had the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships for 14 months, from 1988 in WrestleMania 4, in which they defeated Strikeforce in a pretty darn good match, all the way into when they lost the championships against the Brainbusters in July of 1989. that's unheard of. You know, we talk about Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys, and the Hardy Boys, really the last 3 great tag teams in the WWE. And we look at their reigns. They had so many different reigns as tag team champions. Although Demolition had only 3 reigns as tag team champions, that was really significant back at that time during the classic era in the WWE. It's hard to really explain it to some of the young fans who have just started to watch wrestling or started to watch wrestling 10 years ago. If you had any championship for a significant amount of time, it meant that you were built up extremely well by the organization. You were probably booked well as well in terms of in the creative aspect of things, and their characters really got over during that span. You knew they were dominant just by their look, but having the championships for that long just substantiated that entire notion. So it was really interesting in that regard, just for a team like Demolition, multiple-time tag team champions with 2 really significant reigns as tag team champions in terms of longevity. So that alone is impressive to me. Now, later on in the Paradigm, I'm going to show you a small package, small video package in regards to Demolition. It won't last very long. It's about a minute clip, just for you to get a certain understanding of who they were and how they competed in the WWE, in case you haven't seen them, and just to bring up some old memories for those who enjoyed their work just as I did during the 1980s and early parts of the 1990s. But basically what I'm going to do on the show today, I'm just going to talk about a couple of my favorite memories of Demolition. And I'm going to end the show with that as well. So, first off, everybody knows, as I mentioned earlier, about their WrestleMania 4 match with Strikeforce. Now, the WWE didn't have a lot of build-up into this match, but they really built both tag teams extremely well separately prior to this match. And I always like the feeling, you don't have to have a strong build in order to have a great match on the pay-per-view. It's just that both of the characters, or both of the teams in this matter, have to be built up well, and have to be built up well individually. And what I mean by that is, you have a team like Demolition, who are they come into the WWE with their manager, Mr. Fuji. They kick everybody's tail. They look dominant. They look like they're #1 contenders without actually having a program with Strikeforce to substantiate that. And I think that's just brilliant. Strikeforce, on the other hand, they're defending their tag team championships against everybody. So eventually, they're going to have to cross paths with this new and exciting team in Demolition. And that's exactly what occurred in the WWE during this span. And Demolition finally had their chance. They capitalized on it, deviously speaking as well, but they capitalized on it and they became WWE Tag Team Champions. It was a logical angle, made a lot of sense, although it didn't need a lot of build. The WWE could take note into something like that today. You're not only building up your tag team, but building up your #1 contenders without actually having a huge program before the actual showdown at WrestleMania, like it was at WrestleMania 4 between those two teams. Demolition's, another good memory I have about Demolition is their angle with the Powers of Pain. Talking about the Warlord and Barbarian throughout 1988, the fall of 1988, those two teams had a really interesting angle. I don't think it was as well planned out, but I think the build up to those two teams went really well. And you basically had two teams with similar styles, the power style, and you're going to see really, when you really think about it, you're talking about two teams who really resembled the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, trying to battle out like who's going to be the best imitation of the Road Warriors. It was kind of comical in that sense, but it really was a decent angle, and it culminated all the way up to the Survivor Series in 1988 when Mr. Fuji basically turned his back on Demolition, the tag team champions at the time, and he heads over and manages the Powers of Pain. Automatically, they turn heel and Demolition turned face, and it really built up Demolition. But for the Powers of Pain, it really didn't do that much for them. I think because the fans really liked the heel aspect of Demolition, and they liked the face aspect of the Powers of Pain. And when you kind of break all that down,